My wedding morning started with a text from my future mother-in-law waking me. "We have your dress. The venue is canceled. Your fiancé knows what is best." As I phoned his number, my hands trembled. Yet, when I showed there for the ceremony, it was the people who suffered a bad surprise. I ought to have recognized something was strange. There were evident signals. Isla, my prospective mother-in-law, never warned me. She behaved kindly while Johnny, my fiancé, was present, but made sure I know she didn't believe I was good enough for her son when we were alone. She asked about my wedding decisions nonstop. She objected to my outfit. She preferred another site. She tried pushing her own ideas, and she pouted like a toddler when I objected. I now know better than what I assumed she was, just an overbearing mother. Johnny seemed different from other people. I considered him to have my back, but I was about to learn exactly how mistaken I had been. I woke up ready, apprehensive, and thrilled. On this was my wedding day, the day I had set aside months ago. That day I had spent hundreds of dollars. The day I meant to go down the aisle and begin my future with the guy I loved. Then my phone started to buzz. "Isla, we have your outfit here. The site is called off, and your fiancé is right about what's best. Avoid creating scenes. Just let it." I initially assumed I was still dreaming. My head felt light, my stomach turned over, and before it set in, I had to read the message at least 3 times. I sat up so quickly I almost fell from bed. My heart was hammering. I got right on calling Johnny straight to voicemail. I dialed Morgan, my maid of honor. None of a reply. I got in touch with the venue. Before she told me, the lady on the phone paused. "Oh, Johnny canceled everything and phoned early this morning. I really apologize." My hands trembled. This did not exist. It couldn't be genuine. I raced to get in my closet. My gown vanished. The shoes I had chosen vanished, including the veil absent as well. Panic developed into something much worse, something cutting edge, something perilous. This was what they had planned. Thinking I would be too depressed to fight back, they had waited until the last possible minute to rip the rug from under me. They got it wrong. I grabbed my keys and put on the first clothing I could come to. Someone had to have picked up my outfit if it vanished. Driving to Johnny's home was first on mind, but something advised me not to spend any time. Rather, I headed directly for Isla's. I saw it in her eyes the instant she unlocked the door. Smug pleasure. She hardly pretended to be startled to find me. She only groaned and leaned against the door like if I were a hassle. "You really should cool down," she said. "Retrain. Restrain yourself." On the morning of my wedding, I was standing there in sweatpants, and this witch was urging me to relax. Where on earth is my dress? Demand it. Not even Isla blinked. "It is gone, and you won't need it anyhow." "The wedding isn't happening right now." My pulse started in my ears. "You have no authority to call off my wedding." That cheeky smile. I wanted to slop it off her face. Johnny answered the phone. He is acting in line with wisdom. I let a long breath in. He is where? Busy. How I missed screaming is unknown. How I not broke anything is unknown. One thing I knew, however, I wouldn't receive from her. I then went, but I didn't finish, not quite close. Isla had no way she had just called off the wedding if she had done this kind of pulling. She had done something much worse. I sought answers and felt terrible in my stomach. I so drove to the location, and I noticed it at that point. Cars were arriving in the lot for parking. Visitors were coming. The stage was set just how I had intended, given the wedding wasn't called off. Simply said, it was no longer my wedding. Out of my vehicle, I headed for the door. Nobody interrupted me. Completely ignorant individuals I knew, those invited to my wedding, smiled at me as I passed. I arrived at the doors and started inside. And then she was there. Ava has wearing a wedding dress, the outfit I wore for my wedding. My eyesight was fuzzy with wrath. My body became frigid all over. Eva had been buddy of mine. She had been beside Johnny always. When I believed I wasn't paying attention, I had disregarded the tiny remarks, the light-hearted gestures, the way she looked at him. I had been really dumb. She was also standing at the altar right now, beside my fiancé, on my outfit. At my nuptials, like I never even knew existed. The treachery smothers you. It suffocated me, squeezed my chest, gave me the impression of falling into the floor. Johnny was standing there looking cool, slayed. This wasn't the most horrible, embarrassing, crazy thing he had done, and it was at that moment everything clicked. There was no last-minute urgency here. This was not driven by impulse. This was supposed to be planned. Johnny had allowed me to spend months organizing this wedding. He approved of my sending invitations. He approved of my spending thousands of dollars. Though in truth he was about to wed someone else, he let me imagine I was going to wed the love of my life. He was going to let me wake up, discover my wedding had been called off, and vanish from his life like some arbitrary female he had previously dated. They meant to wipe me off, and they assumed I would only welcome it. They imagined I would just vanish. Who they were dealing with eluded them. I froze as I stood there, completely ignorant that this was a hijacking rather than a regular wedding. Everyone were laughing, talking, seated. Isla was front and front, grinning broadly, and most likely thought she had executed the ideal crime. Eva changed my veil to shine like a phony-ass angel. Furthermore, Johnny wasn't anxious. He had not been guilty. He was not searching about for me, wondering where I could have disappeared to. Because he knew, for he was in on it. Something within me snapped. I should have started to cry. I ought to have fallen apart. Rather, however, a weird, quiet sensation descended over me. They had stolen everything from me, my dress, the place, my fiancé, my wedding. I was not yet gone, however. I straightened my shoulders, then carried on walking. A few looked at me, some confused, some recognized. Whispers emerged, but none of anybody stopped me. Till I got to the first row. Isla fixed her gaze on me, and I saw it. For the first time, I was afraid. She got up fast and moved in front of me like she could physically stop me from destroying her dream. She snarled, her voice low, "You have to go." I graced myself, actually started to grin. I intend to remain. The whispers became louder as well. Each guest was urging the others. Daisy, my cousin, fixed me with wide open eyes. Looking toward Morgan, my closest friend, maid of honor, and then I saw something. She looked ashamed, as she was aware. My tummy turned around. My fiancé had bet on me, thanks to Eva, my fictitious buddy, via his insane mother. However, Morgan too. That most affected us. She started to say something, but I wasn't in the mood to hear apologies. I went back to Isla, still struggling to seem to be in charge. She replied, pushing a grin, "You were not invited." I nodded. Bright. Indeed, based on last check, this was my wedding. Johnny turned at that. Although his face was blank, his eyes held something, an ephemeral flash of terror. Standing beside him, Eva became pale. People were watching right now clearly. Johnny moved forward, his voice steady, trained. "Let us not do this right here." I lowered my head. "But you wanted to do this here, right?" I motioned around at the site, "Since you designed this whole thing behind my back." Like she could possibly correct, Eva reached for Johnny's arm. "Look, we didn't start. She began." I isolated her. "You did not want what, Eva? Did you not take my fiancé? Not worn my dress? Not let me arrange my own wedding as you watched from the sidelines ready to replace me?" Her mouth opens and closes like a fish. I looked to Johnny once again. "How long?" I begged. He remained silent. "You had been organizing this for how long?" "Still little." Eva twitched. "It just occurred." I burst out in a harsh chuckle. "It just occurred. Oh, so you just stumbled across my wedding dress? Into the bedroom with my fiancé?" Isla let out a long sigh. Put stop to creating a scene. I turned my head toward her. "You designed this, then?" She was not negating it. I nodded, a chilly, distant sense washing over me. "Isla, you know, I felt very ready to be the larger person, to wed your son and put up with you going forward." I stepped forward, dropping my voice to only she could hear. "Right now, though, I'm going to wipe you out." She shined. "Excellent." Johnny spoke at last, his voice too quiet. "All right, it's over. Let us now just proceed." "Proceed on. Transpose in on." I felt something within me crack. "All right," I said, bringing out my phone. "Let us then clearly explain to everyone precisely what is happening." I start play. Isla's voice tore over the speakers. "We now have your dress. The site is off limits, and your fiancé is wise." Gasps. Then, Johnny's voice. I'm sorry, babe. However, my mother is correct. Simply said, you are not good enough. For me, Eva fits more precisely. She will be a proper wife. Entire. Quietness. It was so still that I could hear someone drop a champagne glass. Haunted, Eva moved away from Johnny. Isla's face came devoid of color. Johnny? Johnny looked as if he could pass out. I inhaled deeply to allow the occasion hit in. I then leaned in and stared direct in the eye Eva. Still need him. She fled. Isla looked at Johnny. You informed her about this? Johnny was still stuck, his head unable to comprehend how poorly this was working for him. I withdrew yet another piece of paper. You aware of another I possess? I unfolded it gently and said, the wedding's debt. Isla's head swung to meet my. Which? Before the wedding, Johnny and I signed financial contracts. He therefore owes me. For everybody. Her mouth opened. $35,000, I responded, reading the figure off the page. Immediately due. Johnny's expression revealed sheer terror. That is not, I said, shrugging. It's written. Signature signed. Legal, I then laughed. And should you fail to pay? I bent forward. You know, I find a good public controversy to be interesting. Isla seems about to pass out. Johnny stuttered. You cannot. Oh, I can. I turned to face the gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly enjoy the performance, since it is still in development. Johnny looked like a cornered rat. Though Isla's mouth was opening and shutting, no words came out. The attendees? Not sure. A few had their phones out, filming everything. Eva had vanished really well. Still stuck in shame, however, Morgan, my so-called best friend, stood there. I failed. Johnny had absorbed everything from me. His mother had taken care to confirm. They had intended me to be too humiliated, too shattered to resist. They had, however, undervalued me. And today, I was going to wreck them. The doors swung open just as Isla was ready to open her mouth, most likely to scream some apology. One man in a sharp suit arrived carrying a briefcase. He expressed apologies for the disruption, strong enough for everyone to hear. The face of Johnny became ghostly white. For this? My attorney here was Miss. My name. He nodded at me. Everything is in order. I started to smile. Great timing. Actually, Isla grabbed Johnny's arm as though she could hold him upright before he passed out. Has you hired a lawyer? She expelled. I shifted to face her. Definitely I did. Your son and you pilfered my time, money, and wedding. You believe I would not have some legal backup? Guest gasps. Now some people were loudly whispering. Johnny at last found his voice. This is absolutely absurd. Not even looked at him, my attorney did. The financial agreement you signed before this event legally commits you, Johnny E., to pay all wedding expenses. Johnny gasped in air. $35,000, my attorney said, going forward. Not negotiable. Isla passed out. She screamed, This is a hoax. The attorney blinked, none at all. No, ma'am. Legally binding is what it is. You organized this wedding, then changed the bride at last call. Your son thus owns the bill right now. Johnny's face turned from color to drained. You have until the end of the day, my attorney said, before legal action is started. To cover a laugh, a waiter coughed. A murmurer in the audience said, Holy Shasterisk tea. Then still another voice raised itself. Wait, Morgan. Her voice wavered, turned around. She looked broken, so I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear what she had to say. She drew in a long breath. Yes, I knew. Increasing gasps. Johnny whipped his head toward her. Morgan, shut down! She gave a wild headshake. I cannot. Neither can I keep lying. She let tears flow from her eyes. Isla informed me several weeks ago. They were supposed to replace you, she told me. She said you weren't the right kind of wife for Johnny. I felt sick. My best friend had known. Morgan wiped her eyes. I wanted to tell you, I really did. But Isla, she threatened me. She said if I warned you, she'd ruin me. She'd make sure I lost my job. I blinked. Your job. More murmurs from the guests. Morgan looked down, ashamed. Isla owns the firm I work at, she said. She said she'd fire me if I told you. Isla crossed her arms, and I would have. The crowd booed. Someone yelled, Are you serious? Morgan looked at me desperate. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I was weak, and I held up a hand. I couldn't process this right now. I turned back to Johnny and Isla. You really threatened my best friend's job just to get rid of me? Isla rolled her eyes. It's called handling problems. I let out a breath. Unbelievable! But Morgan wasn't done. She turned to Johnny, hands shaking. Tell her the rest. Johnny froze. Isla whirled on her. Morgan, don't you dare! Morgan's voice rose. Tell her the rest, Johnny. Silence. Dead. Silence. I watched Johnny's face crumble. I knew then it was even worse than I thought. I stepped forward. Johnny. He wouldn't look at me. Tell me. Johnny swallowed hard. His hands tightened, his jaw locked. Then he finally murmured, Eva's pregnant. The room burst. I staggered back. Pregnant, pregnant. I heard people gasping, murmuring, mumbling obscenities. Eva had been my buddy. She had taken my fiancé, donned my dress, attempted to hijack my wedding, and now she was expecting his baby? And I was meant to simply disappear? Johnny had the guts to seem remorseful. Like an apology will help to correct this. I turned to see Isla. This then was what this was about. You wanted me gone because of this. She shrugged as naturally as it seemed. Eva is producing a successor for my son. Heir. Like we were in some medieval royal families. I smiled, really laughed. Johnny winced. I put out a hand. I didn't want for things to turn out this way. Ignore not. Just, please, not. I looked over to the visitors. Let's all applaud Johnny and Eva, who were expecting a kid after a backstab to me. Someone clapped realistically. A lady seated behind said, I need more popcorn. Johnny seemed to be unhappy. Isla was simmering. I was finished. I turned to ask my attorney. Are we doing okay? His nod was deliberate. I will care for the rest. Fantastic. I polished my outfit. I then headed out. Since I had one more action to do. Furthermore this was only starting. I ought to have turned around. I wanted to go. But I knew from within me that I still had to continue. Because after everything, following the stolen wedding, the lies, the treachery, still something remained lacking. And I had to know just precisely what it was. Turning back to Johnny, who was scratching his temples as all of this was only causing him a headache, like I was just a matter to address. Isla was mumbling under her breath, glaring Morgan deathwise, most likely hoping she could light her on fire with her thoughts. The visitors were dining on this. Shock drove several to have hands over their mouths. Others carried out recording on their phones. And then Eva came back in. She had an angry gaze. Not guilt-based, not guilty, angry. You basically had to destroy everything. She waved at me, going right down the aisle in my dress as if she still belonged there. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, I apologize. Did I spoil your great day? Breathing heavily, she crossed her arms. She growled. You were not meant to find out like way. I looked at her momentarily astonished. I then burst out laughing, actually giggled. You really are amazing, I remarked. From what aspect of this did you believe I would not learn? Where did you pilfers my fiancé from? Where was the part you wore my dress? Alternatively, the point where you are expecting his child? She flinched at that, and I realized then it wasn't intended to come out. Johnny slumped. Eva, stop chatting. I leaped. What else exists, Eva? I squeezed. You may as well dump it all right now. She turned her back on. Panic driving Isla onward, she stepped forward. Eva, not you dare! Too late! Eva yelled. You consider me to be the evil guy? She vomited. What was promised me, do you know? The room stopped completely. Johnny's head swung upward. Eva, shut down. She was finished nevertheless, hiding secrets. She exclaimed, eyes blazing. I would have a great existence. Johnny is going to wed me. We would be that ideal pair. That I would represent their family's fresh face. My stomach started to flip. Isla had arranged this before today. Eva was selected by her like a replacement doll. Then, Johnny had gone along with it. Eva spoke with unsteadiness. But now I realized the reality. I never was going to be the wife. Simply, I was a means of disposal for you. And once the baby is here, eyes narrowing, she turned on Isla. You were planning to drive me out as well? Isla's face clenched. Be not foolish. Eva stepped in front of her, shaking her head. Hello, God. You were, not least of all. You kept insisting then that the baby was the only thing that really counted. Johnny tightened. Eva, let me discuss this later. But just now she was whirling. You lied to me, she muttered, fixed on him. You declared your love for me. Isla laughed at this. Eva, love has none bearing on anything. Strong families count. That summed up it. Eva passed out. She pulled off the veil, tossed it at Isla's feet, and laughed sharply and bitterly. She continued, voice breaking. I was just another pawn, just like she does. She gestured to me, and it struck me instantly as well. Eva never replaced me. Eva and I had followed the same pattern. She had gone for it as well. The sole variation is I left before it became too late. Eva turned without words, cleaned her eyes, and left. Johnny phoned after her, terrified now. Eva, wait. She refrained. And later? Isla interrupted. You blame this. She yelled at me, pointing really. I blinks. My mistake. She tapped a finger at my chest. Nothing would have occurred if you had just departed silently. I gave a strong breath. You really do not comprehend it, then? I shook my head and replied, Johnny looved nothing. And what do you suppose? Furthermore, he does not love Eva either. You have wrecked his whole life after guiding it all. Johnny's mouth tightened. Isla spun around to face him. Say anything, she begged. Johnny just watched from there, mute, sympathetic. At last he understood he had lost everything. I could have wrecked him more. One last nasty comment I could have said would have buried him. But he was not worth it. Not one of them was. So I retreated. I turned to consult my attorney. Let us go. He nodded and adjusted his tie. Later we will provide the final papers. I was meant to be walking down the aisle in a white dress, but I went down another, past the astounded visitors, over the whispering. Before Isla, enragedly shaking, I stopped not one, but twice I turned around, not looking back. Johnny attempted to get in touch. Surely he did. The messages were pitiful. Can we chat? I made an error. I simply need an opportunity to clarify. None of me responded. Eva went away. She relocated outside of her state. Nobody particularly knows where she disappeared to. Massachusetts? She lost everything, too. Johnny never came out from under public disgrace. The wedding controversy quickly got out there. His commercial transactions fell through. People ceased to believe in him. And Isla turned on Johnny as her reputation began to slide. I heard she went elsewhere to start again. Absent from him. Karma. Karma handled all of my chores. And me too? I lived well. I transferred to a different city. Discovered a legitimate employment. Became close pals. And I turned from looking back. Since the truth is my own. Not because I was getting retribution. Not because I made them ashamed. But I turned aside, since I discovered a life much greater than the one they sought to imprison me in. And today? Looking back at that day, at that text, that treachery, that whole catastrophe, I feel nothing at all. And then that is the finest kind of retribution available.